Hi, everybody. My name is UC Light from New Growth Counseling Service in Carlsbad, California, welcoming you to our Facebook group on anxiety. We have featured here today two of my favorite therapists here at New Growth. We have Andrea Morinoe and Stacy Kostopoulos, and we are going to be talking and dealing with anxiety on this show in all the different ways it shows up in your life and try and give you some ideas and resources for coping. And so with that, I'm going to pass the ball over to Andrea.
Hello. So happy to be here with everybody. I'm hoping that this Facebook group and the videos that we put out is just going to offer a source of information for everybody, that we'll talk about anxiety, what's normal, maybe what's not normal, and maybe a time that you may be figuring out if you need some additional help with your anxiety, and just creating space for this to be interactive so that we can find out what you want to hear about, and we'll be able to try to make as many videos and give you as many resources needed to get through this really difficult time. And hopefully we'll be doing this for quite some time.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Andrea. And Stacy, you're next.
Yeah, all right. So I'm so excited about this because I love being able to tap into resources like this myself for so many reasons. It's free and you can do it whenever you want, even if you are up late at night because of anxiety and you can't sleep or something like that. We intend to create this kind of like an archive here of all different subjects about anxiety, with some help, some helpful tools here and there. Like UC said, it's not therapy, but it is a place that you know that you can go to throw out a question for the therapist to answer. And you know you might also learn something from somebody else's question or from the answers themselves. So I think it's just a really, really wonderful resource, and I'm so excited to be a part of it.
Thanks, Stacy. Like Stacy and Andrea, I'm a therapist as well, and we do hope that you will interact with us. There's going to be a place where you can post a question, you could submit an idea or a topic about a future webinar, and we will be doing live webinars. And if you join this group, then you'll get notices to sign up. It's all going to be free, and we look forward to your participation as much as you want or as little as you like. You can like us, you can share us, and tell your friends about us. It's all free. Thank you so much for joining. All right, that's going to have to just be good enough. Between those two, we got something, right?
Oh, yay.
Okay. Well,
was the traffic loud outside my window?
Yeah, a little.
Did you hear it? Look, I'm going to just close my windows for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Right back.
I almost don't care. I don't know if it feels like we should redo that or not, but I almost don't care. Do you have any thoughts there?
No, I mean, I think this is real. I think that's the good part about it, is that this is what we're doing. Everybody's in it.
Okay, good job. So the next piece would be to go into just this, and we covered some of this already, so I don't want you to feel like we're getting rid of stuff and starting over. I really like the format of a long deep dive for those who want it. So it's neat to have those videos that we've already done and just put them up and let people make of them as whatever they will, regardless of how organized they are. They're like podcasts is what they are. So they're going to be up. But this one, I thought what we could do is just go to point number 2 on the email, where it's like an overview of anxiety video. And it can be either seen as one video or a series of videos, and we can determine that later. But I think to the same point of what we just did, we want to keep this concise. So in the first video, I think we need to talk about anxiety from the perspective of it's got a physical side to it. And we should talk about the symptoms of anxiety as physical symptoms. And then we should talk about it as an emotional reality. And by that, I mean, you know, kind of, we can talk about the body, but we should really talk about things pertaining to the heart. And then the psychological and mental part of it, I think, is more like the beliefs, the thoughts, kind of words around the fears themselves, as opposed to just the emotion of fear. I think fight, flight, freeze is part of physical. It's also part of emotional. It gets subsumed in psychological. And I haven't really offered much more of an outline than this, just kind of thinking off the top of my head. And I might even send this one off to Joe Tran for like a, what is anxiety? And then like a little bit here, and then a little bit there, and then a little bit here. So I don't think we need to do a lot of like perfectionism right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But whoever's going to watch this, I want you to watch this and really, I don't want you to transcribe it, but as each point gets made, we really want timestamps so Joe can kind of work with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So does one of you want to introduce this section? Do you like it when I'm the introducer and then you're kind of the panelist? Is it easier if I keep you guys the panelists and I'm the MC?
I think what I like the best is that you are for sure the end piece that wraps it all together. And because I think Stacy and I will kind of go off onto tangents sometimes, and then you can kind of bring it together at the end.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know, Stacy, if that's...
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As far as being the panelists and you kind of directing the show, I like that, because what if I direct it somewhere that you didn't intend it to go? Like that would be my interpretation on that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So then I'll maybe open up and say, this is a video that's going to talk a little bit about what is anxiety actually. And does anyone want to take a particular leg? I mean, there's 1, 2, and 3 there: physical, emotional, psychological, or would you rather have a little bit less structure? Just talk about your thoughts on anxiety.
I feel like the structure can be good, because then we know what our topic is, because I think we would probably say very similar things.
Yeah.
So
which one do you want to handle there?
I mean, when I think of anxiety, the way that I want to describe it is, sometimes when we have anxiety, what we're actually feeling is fear, and we don't know how to tap into that fear and understand it. And so then it presents in heart palpitations, I'm trying to think of the other physical things, that pressure, holding it in our shoulders, it can come out as reactions, anger, and I mean, it comes up, all those things come up. So I feel like if we're focused on one thing, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Stacy, is there something that comes up for you?
I was just talking to a client about anxiety the hour before this, and we were talking a lot about the physical part of it, so I can jump in and do that. I can give some examples of that. The other two parts of it, I feel good about both of them, like the psychological and mental, with all the beliefs involved, and how we don't often realize that we've got these beliefs that are part of the situation.
So what we could also do is I could just be like, let's talk about what anxiety is. And we're not going to really talk about the different kinds of anxiety in terms of a disorder here. We're just going to talk about what anxiety is. And I could just be like, could you talk a little bit about the physical aspects of anxiety? I could start with one of you, and then the other could just jump in. I could, Stacy, you have anything to add to that? And then you could add or not. And they're like, how about the emotional reaction? There's definitely an emotional piece. So it can be a little bit more conversational. We could try that.
I like that.
Okay, so I'll start physical with you, go emotional to you, and then kind of, or physical with you is what you said, Stacy, because you had just done that.
Sure.
And then you'll add to it, Andrea. Then we'll go emotional reaction with you, Andrea. And then you can add to it, Stacy. And then psychological, mental. We'll just go in that order. I'll start with Stacy and give you each a chance to say something, and you can pass or not.
Okay.
Okay, well, welcome to the Anxiety Facebook group for New Growth Counseling. I have no idea what we're calling this thing. Let's see. For this video, we want to actually just talk to you about what anxiety is. Anxiety is a term that we hear all the time. I'm feeling anxious. My husband has anxiety. These sometimes mean different things. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what is anxiety. So starting with you, Stacy, one of the things we know about with anxiety is it's a physical reaction. Could you maybe talk a little bit about the physical side of anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many different physical components to anxiety. And if you think about it, when we're in a place of anxiety, we are in a place of fear, but we just might not realize that. We might not realize that we're in fear. When we're in fear, we get a whole different body chemistry. We get all these stress hormones. We get cortisol and adrenaline and epinephrine, and pretty soon we're just kind of overtaken with this physical state. Some of the things that you might be experiencing when you're in anxiety are a rapid heart rate, faster heartbeat, stronger heartbeat. You might notice a change in temperature. You might get like really hot all of a sudden, or you might get really cold all of a sudden. You might be a person who blushes or gets splotchiness on your face or in your neck. You might be a person that starts to perspire, with that hot kind of feeling. You might also be a person that has a hard time getting your words out. You might start to trip up over your words or stutter a little bit or not be able to think of a word, having that trouble concentrating, which kind of goes into some of the more mental effects. But that if we stick with even just the words, you might notice that your voice starts to tremble or your voice starts to crack up a little bit. That happens a lot when people have anxiety about public speaking or about confrontation. Or
Dry mouth.
Dry mouth is one, you bet, right? Maybe even dry eyes, maybe even a little bit of tearfulness. Just all of these different things that you might experience one or a few or all of them at once, but it's a real testament to how powerful anxiety is when we're in it and how it can actually have a really detrimental effect on us in life.
Well, thanks for sharing some of that. I think you're right. It can be kind of all over the map. Andrea, do you want to add anything to the kind of physical reactions that come with anxiety?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about leg shaking or feeling the need to pace or feeling the need to hide. I've always thought about heart palpitations too. That comes up all the time, and you had mentioned that too. The other part of this is not just the physical part, it's the emotional part that comes up. And I know, Stacy, you had said that when you think of anxiety, you think of fear. And I think that's something that I think is overlooked with people. I don't think that they quite understand that most of anxiety, probably not all of it, but most of anxiety is really about what we're fearful of. And so when we think about fear, then fear is a very vulnerable emotion that is not very easily expressed. And so that's why I think sometimes anxiety comes up. And then we sometimes have reactive emotions around anxiety because we don't feel like we're safe enough to express our fears. So then that can come out in anger, that can come out in aggression. Sometimes that comes out in hiding or shutting down and not wanting to talk to people. It could be, around, sadness. You can, that's why depression and anxiety really fit hand in hand with each other quite often, because those vulnerable emotions that come up are so difficult to process that we aren't able to share that, and it makes us feel really sad. So those are some emotional components of anxiety that I wanted to share.
I also just kind of sitting and listening, I get to think a little bit because I'm not on the spot talking, but one that I didn't hear much about that I know you'll agree with is what happens in your belly. That pit of the stomach feeling, the churning, the butterflies, sick to my stomach. And I agree, there's that physical and emotional, and separating the two is kind of a fool's errand. Like they both sort of come together. How about some of the psychological or mental sides to this, Stacy? You were commenting on that before we started filming here.
Yeah, absolutely. Those, you know, if you think about having a fear but not being aware of the fear, then that has to lead to, well, what's going on with that? And it could very well be that you've got a belief inside that there's some mental process or some psychological process going on for you where you've got a belief that if I do XYZ, there will be this negative outcome.
Yeah.
And those negative beliefs can be just about anything. Most of the time they're relational in the work that we do. And that's part of the work that we do, is helping people find out what those relational outcomes would be due to a negative belief about the self, or a negative belief about somebody who's really important to you. But those negative beliefs, a lot of times when if we know that we're feeling anxiety about something, it's not always easy to connect it to the negative belief. And another part of this complicated picture is that we might actually have shame for having a negative belief. And that is a big block to even acknowledging that there might be a negative belief or a fear emotion, because we tend to tell ourselves, like, if we're afraid, that must mean that we're weak, or that something's not right, we're not competent, or, you know, any number of things. But that mental part of it also is super, super prominent, I think.
That's really good. Go ahead, Andrea. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I was thinking while you were talking, what came up for me is, I think what I hear the most about anxiety is, I just can't shut it off. The thoughts just keep coming, and it's like rapid fire. And so it doesn't give you a chance to kind of sit back with the anxiety and go, what is going on for me right now? Because your thoughts are just taking over. And so that's one thing that I think comes up for most people. And the beliefs, when you were talking about the beliefs, I kept thinking that feeling of I'm scared or I'm in danger. You know, the very specific beliefs that comes up for me when you talk about anxiety is that one. And then I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, or, you know, those are very common when you kind of dial it down and really hone in on what's going on for that person. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. As we're going to move on to other topics here, it's really good for us to be helping people understand that anxiety is sort of a complicated thing. It can be a normal small thing, or it can be a big thing. It can be something that develops quickly and a result of something powerfully scary, or it can develop over a lifetime. But it has that physical component, it has that emotion of fear, worry, and it has that psychological and mental side where something is inside of us that we're maybe believing about ourselves or about our situation or our status, and that harm or bad things will come to us, right?
Right.
And so this is at the root of all anxiety. We thank you for watching. There's going to be more segments here. We're going to get into the different kinds of anxiety next. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay. And then however we do the watching of this, obviously, like, we want starting points and ending points in what we did. And any discussion, like right now, this is like the discussion section between the filming. Like, it's okay to write things down, like when you watch this content and annotate it or whatever, but just be aware that probably we don't need to take a whole lot of notes here unless somebody says something and we're like, oh yeah, that was worth remembering. Like, we can maybe make an audio note to ourselves for whoever reviews this.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
And I don't know what you mean by an audio note.
Yeah, like right now I can say, oh, let's note what we just said right there. Like, we're brainstorming and talking.
Yeah.
We're off camera right now, right?
Right.
But we're still recording, so you don't need to take real detailed notes of this conversation, because we're having this conversation to create the next segment. So
yeah,
unless we say something like, ooh, that should be written down.
Okay,
Got it.
Yes, thanks.
So the next one, I just think we ought to give a list. So performance anxiety is so general. It's like anytime you're performing, that can be musical, that can be public speaking, That could be standing in front of the classroom when you're 15. It can be the job that you do and you know that the supervisor is watching you. Performance anxiety is anything. Test taking anxiety, it all kind of is performance anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then social anxiety is just specific to being around people, right? I mean, a lot of it comes down to the fear of rejection, but social anxiety is, going to a party, going out in public, having to interact with others, having to interact with strangers, right? It usually has that commonality of strangers and being rejected. And you can say whatever you want about it. Panic and agoraphobia, I think, is what we tend to see, what people really think of as anxiety is actually panic disorder. And we should maybe talk about panic attacks and like what a panic attack is. It's that extreme feeling where, I can't control my body and I feel like I'm going to die or have an extreme kind of a response, like not breathe or something. And then the agoraphobia is the reaction that develops as a fear of, like, if I go out of my house again, I can have another panic attack, which I'm terrified of a panic attack. So I develop a fear of going anywhere where I might have one. And that's agoraphobia. And telehealth is fucking awesome for agoraphobia.
Right.
So, and then avoidance on this one, I just want to kind of name how avoidance is a major part of all anxiety. So procrastination falls in avoidance. Conflict avoiders, people pleasers. There's sort of an element of anxiety there. And then phobias, obviously the most important one, specific fears that are highly specific, that only show up, like the fear of vomiting, fear of getting on a plane, fear of snakes, whatever it may be. So I don't think we want to go in any great depth. I think we just want to talk about these and kind of list them off and name them so that anyone who's going to watch this next video segment can be like, oh, I definitely have anxiety. Wow, I didn't think of that as anxiety or whatever. And do you feel like there's anything we're missing here? This is all off the top of my head. Is there anything that we're missing about other kinds of anxiety? I'm probably forgetting a lot, actually.
Is sexual anxiety performance anxiety, or is it
Often.
fear of intimacy too? Probably avoidance of intimacy, I guess. Maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I think anything that we might avoid. So when we get to that topic, and I can be like, let's talk about performance anxiety. How have you experienced performance anxiety in your work? And then just kind of go back and forth. And what about social anxiety? What's your experience of working with people? Like, how would someone know if they have social anxiety? Or what about panic and agoraphobia? Let's talk about that. Would it be okay just to kind of go like that and then just kind of each person goes and says something?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Should I start with you, Andrea?
Sure. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so my brain is not as highly functioning as I was the last time. So, yes.
I'm with you.
Me too. Good. It's a party.
And I wonder if I should be like, I'm just going to be like, this is UC, and from New Growth Counseling, owner of New Growth Counseling in Carlsbad, California, with Stacy and Andrea. I think I'm just going to be like that each time.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is UC, owner of New Growth Counseling Services in Carlsbad, California. And I am again with Stacy and Andrea, and we are talking about anxiety here on our channel. And right now in this video, we just want to kind of name all the different kinds of anxieties that are out there, because there are a lot of them, aren't there not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Andrea, we sort of talked about performance anxiety. I'm just going to give you each a chance to weigh in. Like, what kinds of performance anxieties have you seen or worked with or experienced?
So many performance anxiety issues I've seen, but ironically, I would say depending on the population of people that I'm working with. For instance, adolescents tend to have a lot of anxiety around performance. That can be test taking. It could be not performing well enough in school, not performing well in sports, not being able to, and we're going to talk about social anxiety, but in some ways that can couple with performance anxiety. So, I mean, for me, when I think of performance anxiety, my initial gut is adolescents. But then when I think about some of the adults that I work with, it can also come into play with work, where they know they can do the work, but the anxiety takes over and they keep telling themselves they can't. And so that I've seen come up a lot. So I'd say, Stacy, if you want to take on more of the performance anxiety part, those are the things
Sure.
I see most.
Yeah, sure. I love that you mentioned work, because that's kind of where my mind was going to, thinking about some of the clients that I work with, and then also the aspect of just interacting with people in your world, right? So things like work, performance anxiety can happen in the moment, but it can also happen about like monthly quotas, or your 6-month review is coming up or something like that. I'm thinking about maybe a person in a sales position, because to sell something you have to perform in a way that's acceptable to the customer. But then if you think about how much you've sold in 1 month, you're performing for your boss and the shareholders or the board or whatever it is. So you're performing on all these different levels all the time. And that's a stressful place to be if you're in that kind of position. And you can also have somebody who's working with their hands that's creating a product, whether it's a jeweler or a carpenter or a roofer or anything like that. You're performing when you are creating something to someone's standard for money. You're actually receiving money for your performance on what you create. And there can be stress in that too. Somebody might not have really thought of it as, oh my gosh, it kind of is a performance anxiety issue.
Yeah.
Right? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say also, I think we touched on it before we were recording, but there's also performance anxiety within relationships.
Yes.
So trying to show up for our partner can be, and that can be interpersonally in communication, that we feel like we can't show up for them, or it can be sexually, it can be in many different forms relationally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching an Animal Planet show with my 17-year-old son the other day, and there were these birds in courtship, and this little bird somewhere in the Borneo jungle actually changes its eye color when it's courting the female. And it starts to do this dance, and it changes its shape and all that stuff. And if you think about courtship in human relationships, we're performing there too.
Big time.
Look good. We want to impress. We don't want to come off as weak or dumb or in any way incompetent. So those relationships also carry quite a lot of performance anxiety when you're just kind of like looking for a partner. You might not even be in a relationship yet.
Absolutely.
That burden too.
Boy, what a great segue into social anxiety. I think we've probably already covered quite a bit about social anxiety, because we're wanting approval, sometimes we're wanting a sale. But let's talk a little bit more about like what standard social anxieties are, right? Social anxiety is always showing up when people are around other people, right? So what do you notice, just kind of briefly, about social anxiety?
When I think of social anxiety, I immediately think of someone who's terrified of what others are viewing them as. Yeah. So to me, it's an absolute horrific fear of the view of others. So, and ultimately that ends up being an issue to me about rejection. So I think that's where social anxiety really comes from. And I think where we would see it, or how we would see it present, would be the prior video, the heart palpitations, the nervousness, the avoidance, not wanting to go to social situations because you know that all you're going to be doing is scanning the room and wondering why nobody's talking to you. Yeah. Why are you alone, even though there's all these people? So that's when I think of social anxiety.
Yeah. You want to add anything to that, Stacy?
Yeah, I think it's so it can be so debilitating in terms of our social development. And it can happen with people who mean a lot to us. Like if we tend to give a lot of power to peer groups or to groups that we perceive have the power to exclude us. And we just think about how painful that can be. But it can also happen with people that we don't even know, like I don't know, the cashier at the gas station or something like that. If we're a person that has an internal negative belief about ourselves that's really prominent, and we might not even be aware that we have that, we might start to place perceptions on people that we don't even know as them judging us in some way, right? And we start to come up with all this affirming evidence of why that stranger thinks poorly of us, and it might not be anywhere near the truth.
Yeah.
But we still experience the physical aspect of that anxiety. We still start to get tense, and we're carrying all those negative effects in us. So it's just another way we can see how much that can really impact our lives.
Yeah. And you know, I want to go next to avoidance kinds of anxieties, because in a lot of ways, you just said it right there, where you anticipate these negative things and so you avoid going out. Let's just talk about anxiety under the category of things we avoid, right? So one of the two big ones that come up for me are procrastination, which is avoiding something that I should or ought or need to get done, but for whatever reason, I just keep putting it off. And there's kind of a feeling of anxiety that goes with that. And the other one is like conflict avoidance, which is flipped around as people pleasing. It can be flipped around as people pleasing, I should say, which kind of goes back to your thing about the fear of rejection, Andrea, and like wanting to avoid conflict, to avoid rejections. Maybe you could talk about these two if you like, but I'd love to hear you talk about the kinds of things that you find people avoiding in general that's really driven by some kind of anxiety. What have you seen in your work and helped people with? And I'll just kind of see who comes up with the first thought and go from there.
I can.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
The first thing that comes to my mind is when I work with couples, and when one of them is certain that if they bring up a certain topic, there will be a negative response from their partner, and they do not want to experience that negative response, whatever it is. And it's probably for very good reason, because the partner is so important to them. The idea of making them sad or angry or upset, or having them then have a reason to reject us, is just too much.
Yeah.
It's just too much, because if my partner is upset with me, then we start to, all these little lights will start to light up on that Christmas light chain. Like, if my partner is upset with me because I did this, then they're probably going to think poorly of me. And if they think poorly of me, then they might end up rejecting me. And if they reject me, I'm going to lose this relationship. And that could mean I'm going to lose this family. I'm going to lose where I live. All these horrible things are going to start to happen. So you know what? It's just easier not to voice my thoughts.
Right. And we would think about that as actually kind of, even though that's a relational thing, it's anxiety, right? There's anxiety there that we would want to address and particularly have a conversation with, right?
Right.
Right. Good. That's a good one. Andrea, you had a thought, I think.
Yeah, but what's funny is it's so similar to what Stacy was going to say. Mine was in parenting, which is a very similar relationship in terms of that rejection, that feelings, that feeling of, if I set a boundary with my child, they're going to be upset with me, or they're not going to get what they want, or there's going to be a tantrum, or something's going to happen, and it's overwhelming to feel that way, and that you're not pleasing people. And so it's ironic that we were going to basically talk about the same thing, because your explanation of it was exactly the same as what comes up as a parent, with just some different nuances, but basically the same. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So maybe we should go into two of the other kind of anxieties that are probably a little less common. I think there's lots of people dealing with performance and social anxiety and avoidance behaviors that don't come to therapy, but just kind of deal and cope. But the next two are pretty big. This is the panic disorder and this long word agoraphobia, which basically means the fear of leaving your safe place, usually leaving your home. Panic disorder and agoraphobia. I'm just going to kind of define terms. A panic attack is it's everyone who's had a panic attack really knows what it is, because there is a feeling that I'm about to die, and yet there's not something that's about to kill me. It's just I suddenly become aware that my heart is pounding. I think I'm maybe unable to breathe. I'm flooded with these tremendous physical sensations that are so powerful, I literally fear that I may die, or that I will look so ridiculous and so foolish, it'll be a catastrophe. And so it's a traumatic experience, actually. I've never met a person who had a panic attack that kind of said, yeah, it was no big deal. It's always life-threatening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a panic attack happens, and then the fear that another one will happen drives us to never want to leave our safe place. And so we develop agoraphobia often as a result of being afraid to go out and have a public panic attack again, where we will again lose control and maybe die. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about, this. This is obviously considered an anxiety disorder in the DSM, which, is our manual that describes the various mental disorders that we treat. Could you maybe talk just a little bit about your experience with panic disorder and agoraphobia? And let's start with, are you comfortable starting, Andrea? Because I think Stacy started last time. Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear your thoughts on panic.
Yeah, when I have come across panic disorder or panic attacks, what comes up for me when talking to the client is that there is generally a fear that comes up that they aren't even fully aware of. And so when I think of treatment, or when I think of what we're talking about moving forward with panic attacks and panic disorder, is identifying that fear. And then that's where we kind of intervene. And so for me, when we talk about anxiety, and I know that we talked about it in a prior video, but there's differences to me between anxiety that's, typical, something that you probably can work through on your own with some tools, some meditation, mindfulness, and some other things that we can do. Panic disorder or panic attacks, I feel like that's where you kind of cross into the, and I think maybe we go see somebody about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it feels more, it's not just a fear, it's terrifying. It's life and death feeling, which is different than a typical anxiety where it just makes you feel anxious and you want to hide. This is a life or death feeling, even though you're not going to die.
That's a really good point. I appreciate that. Stacy, would you like to add a little bit about your experience with panic disorder or agoraphobia?
Sure, just a little bit. Andrea really said that beautifully. I'm really glad that you connected that, Andrea, to the root cause, which isn't often apparent. Like, we don't always understand the deeper issue that's going on there. And I want to add with panic attacks, it's so debilitating. It truly is a loss of control. People can't see sometimes, their vision goes black, or it becomes like that tunnel vision kind of thing where everything else just goes away, or they can't feel their feet, or they feel like if they're standing, they better sit down really quick, otherwise they're going to fall. It's that debilitating in the moment. And I think I learned that panic attacks usually last a pretty short amount of time. Like that's how they're different from an anxiety attack, which an anxiety attack might last for hours or something like that. And it's not as extreme of a physical sensation as the panic attack is extreme. It is just it's gonna knock you down for sure.
Right.
But again, with the panic attacks, finding out what the source is and having that safe environment to explore that with somebody that you trust is so essential because of the nature of the panic attack. When we're in it, we don't want to go further into it to find out what it is. we want to get away from it as quickly as we can. and we don't ever want to get near it again, which means we're not going to sit there and try to fully process what was going on.
Which then creates the cycle.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Right. That's where
Yep.
agoraphobia comes from, because we don't get in there to process it without the help of somebody who can create that safe place, that protected amount of time, and that trusting environment.
That's a really good point. And just want to reiterate to any of our viewers, as we're just trying to talk about what the fundamentals here is, that we really do provide this information to the general public to open up a conversation, but we're not providing therapy here. And we certainly would say to anybody who's experiencing anything like the terror of a panic attack or the debilitating realities of agoraphobia where you can't leave your house, to really seek a therapist. And in this age of sort of coronavirus, where a lot has moved to telehealth, I think the panic and agoraphobic crowd is really rejoicing because they don't have to leave the comforts of their environment. They can do the therapy right over the internet.
Right.
Well, I think we only have a little bit more time, and we can't cover all the kinds of anxieties that are out there, but let's just hit the most common one that everyone knows a lot about, and that's a phobia. What is a phobia? We'll just kind of put our therapist here on the spot. Stacy, you got the bigger smile there, so why don't we go with you? Is being put on the spot by UC Light, so let's have
Right. Thank you, Lucy. UC almost called you Lucy. See, I can't talk today. Phobia, when there's one specific thing that we freak out over, and we don't often understand why, spiders, the number 13, heights, that you can probably understand why, with people, it's a physical sensation. Oh my gosh, if I look down, I see them so high, I might fall. Spiders, sure, they're venomous. The number 13, I don't know, bad luck. But it's one of those things that it pervades life, I think, wherever you are. If you have a spider phobia, you have a spider phobia there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're afraid of the number 13, whatever, if you're on the beach, you're afraid of the number 13. If you're working, you're afraid of the number 13.
Right.
It's wherever you are, it stays with you.
Yep.
And again, I believe that there is a source in the person's experience that was probably traumatizing at some point. And they may have an awareness of it, they may not, but it's always worth exploring, I think, because sometimes we allow those phobias to get in the way of progressing with life as normal.
Yeah.
We can allow them to get in the way of relationships or a job advancement, or experiencing something new that might really be potentially beautiful. And these phobias limit us in those ways.
I totally agree with you. And what comes up for me is when I think of a phobia, I feel like a phobia is almost always connected to one of the other things that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you have a phobia of something, sometimes it's so bad that it gives you a panic attack if you are exposed to it. If sometimes it gives you that social anxiety, like a phobia of, not wanting to be in a room with certain people when that is present, or if it's agoraphobia, then we're talking about a phobia of people and being around people. So phobia just screams to me that we need to talk about the phobia and focus on the phobia, and then the rest of the anxiety starts to dissipate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what a lively discussion we've had here today, just covering the different kinds of anxieties. And we invite you to leave your comments, to share this video with anyone who might find it beneficial. And we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. There's going to be other videos in this series. What causes anxiety? Do you have normal anxiety, or do you have debilitating anxiety? So stay tuned for more information from New Growth Counseling. This is UC Light with Stacy and Andrea, and we wish you well. That's going to be our thing.
The three-way wave.
Right, the three-way wave.
Super cheesy, and we're just going to have to own it.
There you go. I feel like do you have normal anxiety? Do you have debilitating anxiety? Let's see. I forget which one of you reviewed the video where we just talked about anxiety and PTSD. That was you, right, Stacy? Or was I?
I think it was.
Do you feel like we have a short clip from there that we could do, or should we just do like, do you have normal anxiety right now in a quick clip?
I feel like we probably do.
Okay. Okay. And do we have it like a concise, like, what's normal and what's not? Do you feel like that's?
We can probably do that again to be on the safe side if you want.
Let's do it right now. Let's not think much about it. Ready?
Okay.
Hi, this is UC Light, owner of New Growth Counseling Services in Carlsbad, California. I'm here with Andrea Morin-Nue and fuck. Andrea and fuck.
I wouldn't have laughed, but it was so wrong. Like it wasn't even just a little wrong.
I like heard myself saying it and was like cracking up with myself. Right, I'm gonna get it. Ready?
Oh God. Okay.
Take two.
Hi, this is UC Light. I'm the owner of New Growth Hi, this is UC Light. I'm the owner of New Growth Counseling Services in Carlsbad, California, and welcome to our Facebook group on anxiety. I'm here with Andrea Morin-Nue and Stacy Kostopoulos Smith. What the fuck is your name? Are you Kostopoulos? We're leaving off Smith, right? Oh my God. Leaving off Smith?
Hopefully by the time this airs, we can live up. But I don't know for sure on that. So can go with either one.
Performance anxiety is ratcheting. Hi, everybody. This is UC Light, owner of New Growth Counseling Services in Carlsbad, California, and welcome to our Facebook group on anxiety. I'm here today with Andrea Morin-Nue and Stacy Kostopoulos to talk about anxiety. And we just really want to have a short video here on what's normal anxiety and what's debilitating anxiety that you should really seek treatment for. I think that's a huge question. So I'm just going to throw it out. Like, what is normal anxiety, ladies? Who would like to just give us a stab at what's normal?
I'll take a stab at it. To me, normal anxiety is a feeling that anxiety to me is feeling like not in control and fearful of something. And so if you're feeling that way, sometimes it's because you should feel that way. If you have a sick family member, a lot of us are feeling anxiety right now because of what's happening in the world. And what we're dealing with. And that to me is typical anxiety. And treatment for that can be as simple as doing some meditation, doing some self-care, taking care of yourself. And you can at least bring it down to where you're able to function in life. You're able to still work. You're able to still care for your children, have a relationship with your partner, whatever that is. And I feel like if we flip to the other side, I think to me, it's the functioning aspect of that.
Oh, okay. Stacy, you want to say some more about that?
Yeah. That was really well said, Andrea. Sometimes anxiety makes sense when we've got something really important happening and we're unsure of the outcome, and it's something that we care a lot about for good reason. Mm-hmm. We are going to feel some anxiety. Mm-hmm. That would be normal anxiety, in my opinion. And then the debilitating anxiety that you're talking about, UC, is when, like Andrea said, it starts to get in the way of our functioning as a human being. Mm-hmm. And that can look like a lot of different things. It can be something that impairs our relationships, or impairs our work performance, or impairs, just our normal human development, because we're still developing as humans, even as adults. We have things that we are processing. We have values that are important to us. If it starts to impair your connection with that deeper sense of self and the values that you hold, and it's getting really serious, and you might really benefit from processing that with somebody who's trained to do that.
So yeah, I guess what I hear is that life is not always safe. It's not always in our control and predictable, and so anxiety is normal to life. And we should not necessarily run out for therapy whenever we feel anxious. In fact, we can. Well, what are some things that we can do with normal anxiety? I think you listed self-care as one. How about in a relationship? What's a way that relationships can help with anxiety? I think we sort of all intuitively know, but it'd be neat to hear you guys sort of spell that out.
Oh, yeah.
To me, when we're talking about how being in a relationship can actually help us with anxiety, my initial feeling is, can you lean into your partner? So, do you feel engaged with your partner? Do you feel like if you are having anxiety that you can lean on them for support in terms of being able to, I can't take the day today and I need your help with, caring for the kids. Can you make dinner tonight? I'm just not there. Or can I just get a hug? I just need to feel safe with you. And if you feel that safety and security with your partner, it can really help for you to, especially if you're actually feeling anxiety at the same time, to be able to bond over the anxiety and know that whatever happens, you're going to be okay because you've got each other. And so that can be really helpful when you're experiencing typical anxiety of just feeling not in control of something.
Yeah, good. Stacy, what about for people who don't have a romantic partner, but maybe have friends or communities? How do you look at kind of normal anxiety in that realm?
Right. I love what you said, Andrea. It's so true. An intimate partner relationship, that's the beauty of it right there, is having that one person that's always got your back, but not all of us do. And when that's the case, what do you do, right? Where do you find that anchor to settle into and truly know that you're going to be okay? And there are different ways you can do that. If you've got a trusted friend, then you're rich in that way. And hopefully you can be vulnerable with that trusted friend, and they'll allow that and respect that and care for you. Or family members, or someone in your community, like you mentioned, whether it's a faith community or whatever, an interest community. When that's hard to come by, there's still relief available to you if you can anchor into your own sense of self and know that the essence of who you are is good and not flawed. And you can find a safety and a trust there. But I'll tell you what, I don't think that our society really nurtures that strength and that skill very much. And a lot of times I think that it takes somebody who's motivated to look for how to provide that to themselves.
Yeah.